The modern world is soft, not because it lacks intelligence, not because it lacks resources, but because it worships comfort. Discomfort is treated as trauma. Silence is mistaken for weakness. Control is confused with repression. And anyone who endures quietly, who does not explain themselves, who does not react on command, is labeled cold, distant, dangerous. That word is used as an insult now, but once it was a compliment. Because dangerous did not mean violent. It did not mean cruel. It meant uncontrollable. A dangerous person could not be easily provoked. They could not be easily manipulated. They could not be easily predicted. They moved with restraint. They spoke with intention. They acted only when the moment was ripe. In today's world, people expose everything. Their emotions are public. Their thoughts are instantaneous. Their weaknesses are proudly displayed and defended. They believe transparency is strength. They believe vulnerability is virtue. They believe expression is freedom. And yet, they are more governed than ever. Governed by impulse, governed by validation, governed by fear of being disliked, ignored, or misunderstood. They react before they think. They speak before they observe. They choose comfort over command. This is not an accident. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this long before modern society gave it new names. He watched men destroy themselves not through oppression, but through indulgence, through emotional excess, through moral theater. He saw leaders who wanted to be loved and lost power. He saw men who wanted to appear virtuous and were quietly replaced by those who understood reality. Machiavelli did not hate morality. He distrusted illusions. He believed that most people do not fail because they are evil, but because they are naive. They expect fairness from a world that rewards strategy. They expect honesty from those who profit from deception. They expect stability while behaving impulsively, and so they remain small, predictable, manageable. To Machiavelli, this was the true tragedy, not tyranny, but self-inflicted weakness. Because power does not need to dominate those who surrender it willingly. A man who cannot control his reactions will always be controlled by those who can provoke him. A person who must be understood will always be vulnerable to misrepresentation. A leader who seeks approval will sacrifice authority to maintain affection. This is why Machiavelli wrote not for the masses, but for the few who were willing to see themselves clearly. He observed something uncomfortable. Human nature does not respond to ideals. It responds to incentives, fear, admiration, and habit. People follow those who appear inevitable. They obey those who seem unshakable. They fear those who do not reveal their limits. Danger in this sense is psychological. It is not about physical threat. It is about presence. A dangerous individual alters the emotional climate of a room simply by entering it. They do not dominate through force. They dominate through restraint. They listen more than they speak. They watch more than they react. They reveal less than others expect. And because of this, others project onto them strength, authority, intent. Machiavelli understood that people fear what they cannot read. They respect what they cannot predict. They submit to what they cannot manipulate. This is why silence has always unsettled crowds. Why discipline intimidates indulgence. Why patience unnerves aggression. In Renaissance courts, where betrayal was common and survival uncertain, men learned quickly that survival favored the controlled. The loud were targeted first. The emotional were used. The transparent were betrayed. Those who lasted were not the most moral. They were the most aware. Aware of human weakness, aware of perception, aware of timing, and most importantly, aware of themselves. They trained their reactions. They measured their words. They resisted unnecessary pleasure, not because they hated life, but because they understood leverage. This is where modern minds struggle. Today, restraint is framed as repression. Discipline is framed as obsession. Distance is framed as arrogance. But Machiavelli would ask a colder question. Who benefits from your lack of control? Who profits when you speak too much? Who gains leverage when you react emotionally? Who advances when you seek comfort instead of command? Power never announces itself openly. It shapes behavior quietly. The dangerous individual understands this. They do not rebel loudly. They do not posture. They withdraw, refine, and prepare. This documentary is not about domination over others. It is about sovereignty over yourself. Because Machiavelli knew something modern culture avoids admitting. You cannot rule anything, your career, your reputation, your future, if you cannot rule your impulses. The most effective power is invisible. It does not need to explain itself. It does not need to justify its existence. It is felt through consistency, through calm, through inevitability, and inevitability is built through habit. Not grand gestures, not dramatic confrontations, but small, repeated acts of control, so subtle they go unnoticed. Atomic habits, habits that harden the mind, habits that sharpen perception, habits that slowly separate you from the emotionally driven majority. Over time, these habits do something profound. They make you difficult to influence, difficult to intimidate, difficult to replace. They make you dangerous, not because you seek power, but because power begins to orbit you. In the next part, we will enter Machiavelli's view of human nature itself, why most people remain powerless, why noise is mistaken for strength, and why true danger is always quiet. This is only the beginning. Power does not rush, and neither should you. Before power can be understood, one must first confront an uncomfortable truth. Most people do not want freedom, they want relief. Relief from responsibility, relief from uncertainty, relief from the burden of thinking too deeply about consequence. Niccolò Machiavelli did not romanticize humanity. He dissected it. He watched men swear loyalty in daylight and plot betrayal by nightfall. He saw devotion collapse under pressure and virtue evaporate when survival was threatened. From this, he reached a conclusion that still unsettles modern minds. Men are not guided by what is right, but by what is useful. They speak of morality, yet obey incentives. They praise courage, yet follow strength. They condemn deception, yet reward results. This is not cynicism, it is observation. Machiavelli believed that most people live reactively. They respond to pleasure and pain, reward and punishment, fear and hope. They do not design their lives, they drift within them. And because of this, they remain predictable. Predictability is safety for others, for rulers, for institutions, for anyone who understands leverage. The man who reacts emotionally can be provoked. The man who speaks freely can be trapped by his own words. The man who seeks approval can be controlled by withholding it. This is why Machiavelli believed most people remain powerless even in free societies, not because power is hidden, but because discipline is rare. Modern culture praises expression over restraint, speed over depth, visibility over substance. But power does not move quickly, it consolidates, it watches patterns, it waits for mistakes, it rewards those who understand timing. Machiavelli observed that rulers who survived longest were not the most admired, they were the most consistent. They understood that people do not follow ideals, they follow certainty. Certainty calms fear. Certainty creates order, certainty attracts loyalty. This is why loud aggression often fails. Aggression exposes desperation, it reveals insecurity, it invites resistance. True danger is quiet. A quiet man forces others to guess. A quiet leader allows rivals to reveal themselves. A quiet presence unsettles impulsive minds. Silence creates asymmetry, and asymmetry is power. Machiavelli saw that those who spoke less were assumed to know more. Those who reacted less were feared more. Because restraint signals control, and control signals dominance. This is where modern misunderstandings begin. People assume power looks dramatic, that it announces itself, that it must constantly prove its existence. But power, in its most effective form, is invisible until it is unavoidable. Think of institutions, of systems, of hierarchies that shape lives without being seen. They do not shout, they endure. Machiavelli understood this intuitively. He knew that the most dangerous individuals were those who could endure uncertainty without panic, who could tolerate being misunderstood, who could delay gratification without resentment. These individuals were rare, and because they were rare, they were valuable. This is why Machiavelli distrusted appearances of virtue. Virtue, when displayed loudly, often masks weakness. A man who must constantly announce his morality is usually negotiating with his own impulses. A leader who insists on appearing good at all times will be destroyed by someone willing to appear dangerous. This does not mean Machiavelli rejected morality. He rejected namen vitae. He believed that virtue without strength is fragile, and fragile virtue collapses under pressure. Power, therefore, required a deeper foundation. Not charisma, not popularity, but habit. Habits shape character. Character shapes perception. Perception shapes authority. Most people focus on outcomes. Machiavelli focused on preparation. He understood that the battlefield is often decided long before the first move is made. Through training, through restraint, through repeated choices invisible to others. These are not grand acts. They do not attract praise. They are small, private, uncelebrated, atomic. A habit of silence instead of explanation. A habit of observation instead of reaction. A habit of discipline instead of indulgence. Over time, these habits compound. They create a man who cannot be rushed, cannot be easily deceived, cannot be easily replaced. This is why Machiavelli believed that the greatest threat to power was not rebellion, but complacency. Rulers who grew comfortable became predictable. Predictability invited challenge. Challenge invited collapse. The same principle applies to individuals. The moment you become emotionally predictable, you become manageable. The moment your desires are obvious, you can be controlled. The moment your self-worth depends on external approval, you surrender leverage. Machiavelli would say this plainly: those who do not govern themselves will always be governed by others. This is the foundation of becoming dangerous. Not cruelty, not domination, but sovereignty. Sovereignty over your reactions, your time, your impulses, your attention. The dangerous individual does not seek chaos. They seek order internal first, because only a disciplined mind can navigate a disorderly world. In the next part, we will cross from philosophy into action. We will define what atomic habits truly mean through a Machiavellian lens, why small, almost invisible behaviors are more powerful than dramatic change, and how dominance is built quietly, one disciplined decision at a time. Power is not seized in moments of intensity. It is earned in moments no one is watching. And those moments are coming. Power is rarely lost in a single moment. It erodes, quietly, patiently, through neglect. Machiavelli understood that empires do not fall because of one enemy, but because of thousands of unnoticed decisions. A ruler grows comfortable. A general becomes careless. A leader indulges when he should endure. And long before the collapse is visible, the habits have already betrayed them. Modern minds search for dramatic turning points, revolutions, breakthroughs, transformations. Machiavelli would have dismissed this obsession. He believed power was maintained or destroyed through what is repeated, not what is announced. Small behaviors shape perception. Repeated behaviors shape identity. Identity shapes destiny. This is the true meaning of atomic habits. They are not impressive. They do not draw attention. They do not feel powerful in the moment. But over time, they become unavoidable. A man who consistently controls his reactions becomes known as unshakable. A leader who consistently speaks last becomes assumed to see further. A person who consistently resists indulgence develops an aura of restraint. These qualities cannot be faked for long. They must be practiced. Machiavelli watched princes lose power, not because they lacked intelligence, but because they neglected discipline. They indulged in excess when vigilance was required. They spoke freely when ambiguity would have protected them. They trusted appearances instead of patterns. Habits, Machiavelli knew, create momentum, and momentum determines outcomes. A single emotional outburst can be forgiven. A pattern of emotional reactions becomes a reputation. A single indulgence is invisible. A habit of indulgence becomes weakness. A single silence might seem passive. A habit of silence becomes authority. This is why dangerous individuals focus obsessively on the small. They understand that the world responds to consistency, not intention. You are not judged by what you believe about yourself, but by what others can reliably expect from you. Machiavelli believed most people misunderstand power because they misunderstand themselves. They believe they act freely, but are driven by habit. They believe they are rational, but are governed by impulse. They believe they are independent, but are controlled by comfort. The dangerous individual reverses this. They build habits that resist impulse, habits that delay comfort, habits that prioritize position over pleasure. This does not make them emotionless, it makes them effective. Consider the Renaissance court. Every smile was measured, every word recorded mentally, every habit noticed. Men rose or fell based not on grand gestures but on daily conduct. A courtier who interrupted too often was seen as insecure. One who laughed too loudly was perceived as desperate for favor. One who remained composed under insult was quietly feared. These judgments were not conscious. They were automatic. Machiavelli understood this deeply. He knew that people read habits as signals, and signals shape hierarchy. Modern society pretends hierarchy does not exist, but it does everywhere. In workplaces, in social groups, in families, in silence. The difference now is that people mistake visibility for importance. They confuse noise with influence. They confuse activity with authority. But influence comes from reliability. The man who does not react predictably cannot be easily managed. The man who does not seek immediate reward cannot be easily bribed. The man who does not reveal his inner state cannot be easily destabilized. These are habits, not traits. They are trained. This is why Machiavelli emphasized preparation over improvisation. Improvisation reveals character. Preparation builds it. Under pressure, you do not rise to ideals, you fall to habit. This is not motivational language, it is reality. When insulted, your habit decides your response. When tempted, your habit chooses your action. When challenged, your habit determines your posture. The dangerous individual engineers these habits deliberately. They do not trust motivation. They trust routine. They assume they will be tired, provoked, misunderstood. So they prepare for those moments in advance. This is where modern culture fails. It teaches people to express emotions, not regulate them. To chase pleasure, not delay it. To share thoughts instantly, not examine them privately. The result is a population that is highly visible and highly controllable. Machiavelli would see this as vulnerability disguised as freedom, because freedom without discipline leads to exposure, and exposure invites exploitation. Atomic habits reverse this process. They make you opaque, predictable only in your consistency, unpredictable in your response. They give you time, and time is power. Time to observe, time to decide, time to act decisively. Over months and years, these habits change how others treat you. They speak more carefully. They assume depth. They hesitate before challenging you. Not because you demand respect, but because you signal it. This is why becoming dangerous is not about aggression. Aggression shortens time horizons. It escalates conflict. It reveals intent. Danger, true danger, extends horizons. It makes others uncertain, cautious, reactive, and uncertainty always favors the prepared. In the next part, we will enter the first of the 8 habits themselves, not as abstract ideas, but as precise disciplines. We begin where all power begins, with control over reaction. Because the man who cannot master a moment will never master a situation, and situations decide fate. Power is tested first in moments you do not choose. An insult delivered casually, a challenge disguised as humor, a setback that arrives without warning. In these moments, most people reveal everything. Their insecurity flashes across their face. Their anger escapes through their voice. Their fear rushes into action. Machiavelli watched men lose entire positions of power, not because they were defeated, but because they reacted. A prince who responded too quickly to offense revealed pride. A leader who erupted under pressure signaled instability. A ruler who acted emotionally invited manipulation. Reaction is exposure. The dangerous individual understands this instinctively. They do not eliminate emotion. They delay expression. They create distance between stimulus and response. That distance is power. In Renaissance courts, this discipline was not optional. A single uncontrolled reaction could mark a man as weak, volatile, or desperate, and once labeled, he was finished. Enemies did not need to attack him openly. They waited. They provoked him again and again, until his reputation collapsed under its own predictability. Machiavelli understood that most conflicts are not won by force, but by triggering mistakes, and mistakes are emotional. Anger narrows perception, fear accelerates decisions, ego blinds strategy. A man who cannot control his reactions will always be dancing to someone else's rhythm. This is why Machiavelli valued calm above courage. Calm suggests preparedness, calm suggests confidence, calm suggests control. When others lose control, the calm man appears larger, even if he says nothing. Modern life presents endless provocations. Criticism in public spaces, disrespect masked as honesty, pressure to respond instantly. Technology has shortened reaction time and in doing so has weakened those who surrender to it. Immediate response is framed as authenticity, but Machiavelli would see it as recklessness, because authenticity without discipline is simply predictability. The dangerous individual cultivates a habit of pause, not hesitation. Pause, a measured stillness that forces others to wait. When accused, they do not defend immediately. When challenged, they do not rush to prove themselves. When praised, they do not become inflated. They let the moment pass through them. This unsettles people. Those who provoke expect reaction. Those who manipulate depend on emotional leakage. Those who challenge seek reassurance of their own relevance. Silence denies them all three. Psychologically, this creates imbalance. The aggressor grows uncertain. The critic becomes exposed. The challenger begins to doubt, because nothing is more unsettling than an opponent who does not behave as expected. Machiavelli understood this deeply. He advised rulers to appear composed even in adversity, not because adversity was harmless, but because perception often mattered more than reality. A ruler who appeared calm during crisis maintained loyalty. A ruler who panicked, even privately, lost authority. This principle extends far beyond politics. In leadership, the one who remains steady during chaos is followed instinctively. In conflict, the one who refuses emotional escalation controls the tempo. In personal life, the one who does not react impulsively cannot be easily baited. Mastery of reaction is mastery of leverage. This habit is built deliberately. It begins with awareness. You notice the tightening in your chest, the urge to speak, the impulse to assert yourself, and instead of obeying it, you wait. This waiting is not weakness, it is selection. You choose when emotion becomes action and when it remains internal. Over time, this habit rewires identity. You become known as composed, as measured, as difficult to provoke. People speak more carefully around you. They reveal more than they intend. Not because you intimidate, but because you do not reassure. Machiavelli knew reassurance weakens authority. When leaders constantly explain themselves, they lower their position. When individuals defend every accusation, they elevate the accuser. The dangerous individual allows ambiguity. They understand that not every challenge deserves acknowledgement. Some deserve silence, others deserve delayed response. A few deserve decisive action. The key is choice. Reaction removes choice. Discipline restores it. But Machiavelli also warned against suppression without understanding. Unexpressed emotion does not disappear, it accumulates. The dangerous individual does not deny emotion, they analyze it. Anger becomes data, fear becomes signal, excitement becomes warning. They ask, why did this provoke me? What leverage is being tested? What response serves my long-term position? This transforms emotion from liability into intelligence. Modern psychology confirms this quietly. Impulse control is associated with authority. Delayed response increases perceived competence. Emotional regulation correlates with leadership trust. But Machiavelli did not need studies. He watched history unfold. He saw men with armies fall because they reacted to insult. He saw alliances collapse because of prideful speech. He saw rulers outlast storms because they did not panic. This habit carries a warning. Control can become coldness. Distance can become cruelty. A man who never reacts may forget how to connect. Machiavelli cautioned against appearing inhuman. Emotion must be governed, not erased. The dangerous individual knows when to reveal feelings strategically, when to show mercy, when to display resolve. Because humanity, when controlled, strengthens authority, but uncontrolled humanity destroys it. This is the first habit because it is foundational. Without reaction control, no other discipline holds. Silence collapses under provocation. Patience dissolves under anger. Strategy dies in emotional fire. Master this, and the world begins to move differently around you. People slow down. They reconsider. They become cautious. Not because you threatened them, but because you did not give them access. In the next part, we move from reaction to absence, from restraint to silence. Because if mastering reaction gives you control of the moment, strategic silence gives you control of the board. And those who control the board decide the game. Words are a double-edged sword. They can inspire, they can command, they can betray. Machiavelli knew this. He observed courts where a single sentence could elevate a man to power or ruin him entirely. Speech is evidence. Every word spoken leaves a trace. Every explanation creates opportunity. Every declaration opens a door that others can walk through. The dangerous individual understands this instinctively. They speak sparingly. They measure the weight of every word. They let others reveal themselves before they commit to discourse. In Renaissance politics, silence was a tool of survival. A courtier who spoke too much became predictable. A diplomat who revealed intent became negotiable. A prince who explained his actions too openly invited intrigue. Silence is not avoidance, it is strategy. It is a lens through which the mind can observe reality without interference. The modern world mistakes silence for weakness. Social media punishes reticence. Culture celebrates expression as authenticity. Immediate response is framed as courage. But Machiavelli would see this as reckless. The one who rushes to speak surrenders leverage. The one who fills every pause with words reveals character, habits, and intention. The one who seeks to be understood opens themselves to manipulation. Strategic silence is about shaping perception. When you do not speak, others project. They guess your motives. They wonder at your intentions. They hesitate to challenge what they cannot fully comprehend. Silence is a mirror. It reflects the ambition, fear, and desire of those who speak into it. The loud reveal themselves. The patient observe. Consider the Renaissance prince. He would permit rivals to debate endlessly. He would attend council in silence. He would allow courtiers to betray ambitions before ever making his position known. In this way, he remained untouchable, not because he was morally superior, but because he controlled the flow of information. Modern application is clear. At work, in negotiations, in social dynamics, the one who speaks less is perceived as more intelligent. The one who resists immediate explanation commands attention. The one who allows others to overexpose themselves gains strategic advantage. Psychologically, this unsettles people. Humans are pattern-seeking creatures. We crave knowledge of others' motives. We prefer predictability. Silence denies this comfort. The silent individual becomes difficult to manipulate, difficult to provoke, difficult to anticipate. This does not require invisibility. It requires presence. One must be felt without being fully known, observed without being fully understood. Machiavelli's insight was ruthless in its simplicity. Power thrives in ambiguity. Those who clarify themselves prematurely invite control, but silence alone is not enough. Strategic silence must be active. It must be intentional. It is a tool, not a shield. You must know when to speak. You must know when a single word shifts the balance. You must recognize that action without voice, or voice without action, is wasted. Modern people mistake talking for doing. Machiavelli knew that quiet observation often trumps endless discussion. The dangerous individual lets others overcome it. They allow rivals to speak first. They record details silently. They wait. And then, when the moment demands, they speak decisively. Psychologically, timing matters more than content. A carefully chosen word, delivered after observation, can dissolve opposition. It can inspire loyalty. It can assert control over a group without raising alarms. Silence also protects the self. The one who does not reveal inner state cannot be destabilized. The one who does not explain intent cannot be manipulated. The one who resists the urge to justify preserves autonomy. But Machiavelli warned against complete withdrawal. Silence without presence becomes invisibility. Invisibility invites irrelevance. You must be felt, but not fully seen. In practice, this requires deliberate boundaries. Speak in measured sentences. Ask questions that provoke disclosure. Listen longer than you talk. Allow others to fill spaces with their desires, fears, and assumptions. Over time, strategic silence becomes habitual. It conditions others to expect less from you. It forces them to reveal more about themselves. It shifts the flow of influence in your favor. Consider the modern workplace. A manager who answers every question immediately loses authority. A peer who interrupts constantly loses credibility. A negotiator who explains strategy prematurely loses leverage. Those who remain silent until the precise moment command the room. Strategic silence is also psychological armor. It trains patience. It builds observation. It strengthens internal discipline. It transforms impulsive desire to act into calculated opportunity. The dangerous individual does not fear being misunderstood. They embrace it. They understand that perception is malleable. That meaning is often projected. That control is amplified when others assume rather than know. Machiavelli's lesson is eternals. Speak too much, and you become readable. Speak too little, and you vanish. But speak precisely at the right moment, and you become unassailable. This is the second atomic habit. Master it, and you control not just your voice, but the thoughts, reactions, and actions of those around you. It is subtle, invisible, and devastating. And when combined with mastery of reaction, it creates a presence that feels inevitable. In the next part, we move from silence to discipline over the self, from observing others to commanding the mind. Because no amount of strategic silence can substitute for internal mastery. The truly dangerous are not only unreadable, they are unbreakable. Discipline is the foundation of all power. Without it, knowledge, strategy, and silence crumble. Machiavelli understood this better than most. He watched rulers topple, armies collapse, and alliances fracture, not from external threats, but from internal weakness. A leader who indulged in excess became predictable. A general who ignored preparation faced defeat. A ruler who surrendered to impulse lost influence long before the enemy arrived. Ruthless self-discipline is the daily forging of a mind and body to endure, to resist, and to act with precision. It is not a single heroic act. It is the countless, invisible choices that build inevitability. Consider the Renaissance prince who prepared for decades to maintain a fragile throne. Every action, every restraint, every unspoken word contributed to survival. He could not afford indulgence, for indulgence weakened the chain of command, the loyalty of allies, and the perception of strength. And in this, Machiavelli saw truth power is cumulative. It grows slowly, silently through repeated control over oneself. Modern society misunderstands discipline. It frames strictness as deprivation. It frames restraint as misery. It celebrates instant gratification and punishes endurance. But the dangerous individual does not live for comfort. They live for control, for autonomy, for inevitability. Discipline begins in small, deliberate acts, resisting trivial indulgence, choosing preparation over distraction, maintaining composure when desire tempts, completing tasks that no one observes. Each choice compounds. It builds identity. It strengthens resolve. Psychologically repeated discipline rewires the brain. It creates confidence that does not depend on circumstance. It builds a mental armor that shields against manipulation. It transforms willpower from a finite resource into a default state. Machiavelli observed that armies trained to routine outperformed those with talent alone. Generals who imposed structure conquered leaders who relied on charisma. The subtle, consistent application of effort outlasted the flamboyant burst of energy. The dangerous individual applies this principle to every facet of life. Time is managed meticulously, emotion is moderated relentlessly, energy is conserved strategically, the mind is fed with precision. They do not pursue every distraction, nor do they surrender to fleeting pleasure. Every act is measured against a long-term objective. Modern culture frames sacrifice as suffering. Machiavelli reframed it as leverage. Each small act of restraint, ignored meal, untaken indulgence, controlled outburst, extends authority. Each moment of patience strengthens perception. Yet discipline carries a subtle danger. Without purpose, it hardens into rigidity. Without reflection, it becomes obsession. Without strategy, it is futility. Ruthless self-discipline is never aimless. It is directed, calculated, and consistent with one's long-term vision. Consider the Renaissance strategist who rose quietly through observation and preparation. His competitors sought immediate advantage through charm or aggression. He endured, he learned, he waited, and when the opportunity arrived, his decisive action seemed effortless, inevitable. This is the fruit of habit, not talent, not luck, but habit. The modern mind often misinterprets patience as weakness, yet the disciplined individual is patient by design. They delay the satisfaction of impulse. They avoid emotional reactivity. They endure conditions that would break ordinary people. Every act of self-mastery compounds invisibly. It signals reliability to allies, predictability to rivals, strength to observers. Psychologically, discipline cultivates independence. A disciplined person does not need external approval. They are self-reliant. Their decisions are guided by principle, not praise. Their actions are dictated by strategy, not emotion. Machiavelli warned that uncontrolled indulgence invites exploitation. An undisciplined mind is visible, readable, and manipulable. The indulgent are trapped by their own desires. The impulsive are ensnared by provocation. The unrestrained fall prey to expectation and opinion. Ruthless self-discipline is not merely personal, it is social power. A disciplined individual commands attention without shouting. They establish norms silently. They model behavior that others unconsciously imitate. They generate influence through consistency. But discipline is lonely. It requires resisting the pull of comfort that captivates the majority. It demands patience that irritates the impulsive. It enforces standards that few understand. This is why Machiavelli viewed discipline as dangerous, not because it threatens others directly, but because it produces inevitability. A disciplined mind moves faster, thinks deeper, and reacts more efficiently than all around it. Ruthless self-discipline is cultivated, not inherited. It begins with small, invisible choices repeated daily, choosing preparation over distraction, silence over explanation, endurance over indulgence, focus over novelty. Over time, these decisions coalesce into unshakable identity. The disciplined individual becomes formidable because their control is total. Control over time, control over reaction, control over desire, control over perception. And when opportunity arises, discipline translates into decisiveness. The dangerous individual does not hesitate. They do not falter. They do not waste advantage. Because their mind has been trained, their body conditioned, their will hardened through relentless, daily practice. Machiavelli observed the consequences for those who failed in discipline. Princes who indulged in vice were betrayed. Generals who ignored training lost battles. Courtiers who flinched under temptation were replaced. Discipline is the invisible architecture of dominance. It is not flashy. It is not celebrated. It is painstaking, relentless, ruthless. In the next part, we will examine habit IV control of perception, the next layer of becoming dangerous. For discipline builds the body and mind, but perception shapes the world around you. Without mastery of how others see you, discipline alone is not enough. Power is not measured by what is true. It is measured by what is believed. Machiavelli knew this better than any theorist of his age. He observed rulers whose actual strength was modest, yet feared and obeyed. He observed others, gifted and capable, whose reputation collapsed because their image was inconsistent. The dangerous individual understands perception is reality. It is not deceit. It is clarity. It is the deliberate shaping of how others interpret you, so that your intentions remain veiled and your authority unquestioned. In Renaissance courts, a prince's reputation could be his only defense. Allies, enemies, and opportunists judged him by signals, not facts. A generous gesture could suggest weakness or wisdom. A public act of cruelty could instill fear or outrage. Every nuance was interpreted as evidence of character. Perception is an invisible battleground. A misstep is magnified, an inconsistency exploited, a lapse in image can outweigh decades of competence. Modern society misreads this principle. It equates transparency with honesty. It equates authenticity with trustworthiness. It treats consistency as rigidity. But consistency, Machiavelli would argue, is the essence of power. It is not about lying. It is about controlling the narrative of your actions, about signaling confidence, competence, and inevitability. The dangerous individual curates perception deliberately. They act decisively when necessary. They reveal restraint when power could be flaunted. They cultivate patterns that others recognize subconsciously. Punctuality, composure, reliability, discretion. Psychologically, humans rely on heuristics, mental shortcuts, to judge others. We cannot perceive all nuance at once. We default to patterns. We assign trust or fear based on observed consistency. The disciplined person uses this to their advantage. They become predictable in behavior, but unpredictable in intent. They control what others notice and what remains concealed. Consider a historical parallel: a minor ruler in Florence. He appeared generous in public, cautious in council, merciless in secret. His rivals, reading only the surface, underestimated his calculation. They were manipulated by appearances while he moved with silent certainty. Modern application is simple, though execution is subtle. A manager known for measured calm commands respect. A leader whose promises are consistently fulfilled earns credibility. A negotiator who chooses words and timing deliberately influences outcomes far beyond the literal meaning of speech. The dangerous individual avoids overexposure. They do not reveal weaknesses unnecessarily. They do not justify themselves to those unworthy of insight. They understand that the more people know, the more they can exploit. Yet control of perception is not manipulation for its own sake. It is a tool, a discipline, a form of armor. Without it, the disciplined mind built from habit becomes vulnerable. Without perceived competence, restraint may appear fear. Without measured action, patience may appear indecision. Without subtle influence, silence may appear ignorance. Machiavelli's genius was in recognizing the feedback loop. Habitual discipline shapes behavior. Behavior shapes perception. Perception shapes authority. This loop compounds over time. The individual who consistently controls appearance and reaction becomes both untouchable and inevitable. Control of perception also demands awareness of others. It is impossible to shape belief without understanding what is believed. The dangerous individual observes relentlessly the fears of allies, the ambitions of rivals, the assumptions of society. Then they craft signals that exploit those patterns without ever revealing their true purpose. This is subtlety in motion, a gesture, a pause, a choice of words, small elements that create profound influence. Modern society confuses influence with volume. The loudest voice dominates superficially, but the disciplined, strategic individual dominates invisibly. Their presence alters behavior, thought, and expectation without a single overt assertion of authority. There is a warning inherent in this habit. Perception can become deception. Too much care over image can hollow the individual. They risk becoming a mask without a self. Machiavelli cautioned that intelligence must govern cruelty, and discipline must govern appearance. The dangerous individual balances reality and image. They signal strength without feigning it. They project calm without suppressing the mind's edge. They reveal enough to create confidence, but never enough to surrender leverage. Psychologically, this creates uncertainty in others. The unpredictable, consistent individual compels respect. They induce caution in rivals. They shape interactions before they occur. This habit, control of perception, is the bridge between internal mastery and external influence. Without it, discipline remains private. Without it, silence is ignored. Without it, strategy is invisible. With it, the world responds to you before you act. Opportunities appear aligned with your timing. Allies follow without being commanded. Rivals hesitate before they move. Machiavelli observed this principle in every court, battlefield, and council chamber. Those who controlled perception outlasted those who controlled only facts. Those who mastered how they were seen were feared and respected, even when their resources were limited. Modern application is immediacy. Dress, demeanor, timing, and communication are all signals. Consistency in small, unnoticed behaviors compounds into authority. Reputation is the shadow of repeated action, and perception, once shaped, becomes self-reinforcing. Strategic silence and ruthless self-discipline feed this habit. They create the foundation upon which perception can be controlled. The dangerous individual understands the symbiosis. Master the self, control reactions, be silent, then shape the world's understanding of you. This is the invisible architecture of power. In the next part, we transition from perception to long-term strategy. How the dangerous individual sacrifices short-term gratification for inevitable advantage. How patience becomes a weapon. How foresight transforms discipline into dominance. With reaction mastered, silence observed, discipline enforced, and perception shaped, the dangerous individual turns to the final pillars of mastery, those habits that transform control into inevitability. These are subtle, invisible, relentless. They are the habits of the unassailable. Habit V. Long-term thinking over short-term pleasure. Machiavelli wrote of princes who fell not to armies, but to impatience, a fleeting indulgence, a rash decision, a momentary surrender. These shattered empires. The dangerous individual does not live in the immediacy of desire. They calibrate each choice against decades, not days. Every action is a chess move, measured against possible reactions long after the present has passed. Modern society idolizes gratification. We reward the immediate. We praise the visible. But the quiet strategist embraces delay. The one who resists today's temptation is free tomorrow. The one who forgoes comfort now is stronger later. Patience is leverage. Endurance is authority. Planning across time horizons unseen to others is inevitability. Psychologically, this habit reshapes desire. Impulse weakens. Clarity strengthens. The dangerous individual becomes an architect of circumstances, not a hostage to them. Habit VI. Learning from enemies and failure. Pain is a tutor. Loss is a mentor. Enemies are unacknowledged teachers. Machiavelli observed that rulers who ignored counsel and resisted reflection were doomed. Those who repeated mistakes in the same pattern betrayed weakness. The dangerous individual studies adversity. They dissect failures, analyze provocations, and extract insight from every confrontation. Enemies reveal their tactics. Failure reveals your gaps. Both are tools, not punishments. Modern culture celebrates victory and conceals mistakes. Machiavelli celebrates the opposite. Knowledge obtained from opposition is leverage. Ignorance preserved is weakness. This habit demands humility without surrender, vigilance without paranoia. It converts setbacks into compounding advantage. It trains the mind to anticipate, adapt, and strike with precision when opportunity arises. Habit venered independence from validation. The most dangerous individuals are untethered to opinion. They are not slaves to praise or fear of reproach. They act according to principle, logic, and strategic purpose, not social approval. Machiavelli observed those obsessed with love or admiration. They overexposed themselves, yielded unnecessary advantage, and became predictable. Independence is psychological sovereignty. It shields the mind from manipulation. It protects decision-making from distraction. It ensures clarity when others panic, hesitate, or flinch for social validation. Modern society confuses popularity with strength. The dangerous individual confuses neither. They cultivate an internal compass, immune to applause or outrage, navigating by what is necessary, inevitable and strategic. Habit veers acting decisively when the moment arrives. All preparation, patience, and discipline culminates in action. Machiavelli admired those who did not hesitate when opportunity presented itself. Preparation alone is inert. Strategy alone is theory. Discipline alone is potential. Decisive action converts invisible power into visible effect. The dangerous individual recognizes the moment before it is obvious. They calculate risk, observe intent, and commit fully when conditions align. Indecision is fatal. Hesitation invites competition. Delays squander advantage. History is littered with brilliant strategists who failed because they did not strike. The dangerous individual moves like inevitability, swift, precise, and unassailable. Psychologically, decisive action consolidates influence. It signals competence, clarity, and dominance. It forces observers to acknowledge authority they could not otherwise resist. The shadow of power. Machiavelli never romanticized this path. Danger carries cost. Isolation becomes a companion. Misunderstanding becomes common. Temptation to misuse power is constant. The mind, disciplined and perceptive, may feel alien in the world of indulgence and impulsivity. The dangerous individual must navigate restraint without rigidity, strategy without cynicism, power without cruelty. The line between mastery and tyranny is thin. Machiavelli's silent warning echoes. Intelligence without empathy is vulnerable to rebellion. Cruelty without calculation is self-destruction. Some moments require inaction. Not all opportunities must be seized. Knowing when not to act is as vital as knowing when to strike. Closing act. The silent sovereign. The dangerous individual is not loud. They do not demand recognition. They do not flaunt dominance. They exist as inevitability. Their habits, small, repeated, invisible, create a gravity that shapes the world quietly. Discipline becomes their armor. Silence becomes their shield. Perception becomes their influence. Patience becomes their weapon. Contrast this with the modern individual, rushed, reactive, overexposed, seeking validation. They speak too soon. They act too impulsively. They surrender control without awareness. The dangerous individual observes, endures, and finally decides. They are calm when others panic, measured when others explode, inevitable when others flounder. Machiavelli understood that power is silent, patient, and deliberate. It is the accumulation of small choices repeated over time. It is the sum of invisible victories, quiet observation, and decisive action. True danger is not chaos. It is order perfected in a single unbroken individual. It is discipline that commands without noise. It is foresight that bends the future. And in the end, when the world believes it is moving freely, the dangerous individual has already shaped it. The last lesson is simple, chilling, and eternal. Power is invisible. Influence is inevitable. And the mind disciplined in silence, patience, and action is unstoppable. This is the path of the dangerous. This is the legacy of mastery. This is the silent, relentless art of living like a Machiavellian.